There is a very specific, boiling kind of rage that hits you when a guy in a tailored suit tries to teach you how to survive in the wilderness, but when that same guy actively tries to throw you under the bus to save his own skin, while you are quite literally teetering on the edge of a 3,000-foot drop-off, that is when a different kind of survival instinct kicks in. I learned a long time ago that the absolute best way to deal with a cornered, arrogant rat isn't to fight him. It's to open the cage door, smile, and let him run straight into a trap of his own making. Let me take you back to 1985. I was 33 years old, working for the USDA Forest Service, out in the rugged terrain of the Rocky Mountains. I was a field guy through and through. My actual title was engineering technician, which basically meant I spent my days designing logging roads and supervising the surveying crews who mapped them out. I loved it. I spent my weeks in the dirt and my weekends four-wheeling through the back country. I knew those mountains like the back of my hand. I knew which trails were safe, which ones were sketchy, and which ones would swallow a truck whole. But in the Forest Service, no matter what your day job is, summer means one thing: fire season. When a wildfire breaks out, everyone is drafted. It doesn't matter if you're an engineer, a botanist, or a mechanic. You grab a shovel or you man a station. We had a massive blaze jump the line in the district right next to ours. I was initially assigned to the communications room, working 12-hour shifts on the radios, but sitting at a desk wasn't my style. So when an order came in to drive a truck full of hot lunches up to the line crews on the mountain, I jumped at the chance. That's when I met Vance. Vance was a higher-up from the regional office, a textbook desk jockey. He showed up at base camp wearing a brand new, overly expensive outdoor jacket that didn't have a speck of dust on it. He decided he wanted to ride along with me to quote-unquote see the action up close. Now I'm used to hauling gear, not babysitting corporate brass, but he was a regional director, so he climbed into the passenger seat, immediately complaining about the smell of the truck, and ordered me to drive. We started up the mountain. For the first mile, it was a standard logging road, but the higher we went, the worse the road got. It narrowed down until it was basically just two faint dirt tracks carved into the side of a massive, steep mountain. To my right was a solid wall of rock. To my left, a sheer, dizzying drop-off that went down thousands of feet. One wrong twitch of the steering wheel, and we'd be a twisted pile of metal at the bottom of a canyon. I told Vance we needed to stop. I told him I was getting nervous. There was nowhere to turn around, and backing down 2 miles of a winding cliffside trail is a nightmare. But Vance just scoffed. He looked at me like I was an idiot and ordered me to keep going. He was the boss, so I gritted my teeth and crept the truck forward. But another quarter-mile up, we hit a dead end. Massive boulders had washed out the trail. We were completely trapped. I put it in park and sighed, mentally preparing myself for the brutal 2-mile reverse drive back down the mountain. But Vance wasn't having it. He looked out the window, looked at the sheer drop-off, and insisted that I turn the truck around right there. On a dirt track barely wider than the axles, I stared at him. I told him it was impossible, but he pulled rank. He threatened my job on the spot if I didn't follow his direct order. Now, the rule of mountain driving is that when you make a tight turn like this, you always point the heavy engine toward the drop-off and the light truck bed toward the mountain. So, sweating bullets, I started the excruciating process of making a 50-point turn. I had the truck sideways. The front bumper was hanging out over empty space, overlooking the massive drop. I was being incredibly careful, but right in the middle of it, Vance barked at me. He insisted that I had plenty of room in the front and ordered me to move just a little bit farther forward to clear the rear tires against my better judgment. Dealing with a guy who could fire me with a phone call, I inched forward. The truck dipped slightly down the slope, and when I shifted into reverse and hit the gas, nothing happened. The back wheels spun uselessly in the dirt. We didn't have enough weight in the bed to get traction. We were stuck. I turned and stared at him. He looked sheepish for exactly 2 seconds before his ego kicked back in. And this is where the betrayal happened. Vance realized he had royally messed up, and that the rescue crew would see his incompetence. So, before I could even speak, he snatched the two-way radio off the dashboard and keyed the mic to the fire superintendent back at base camp. "Base, this is Vance. My driver has gone rogue. He ignored my directives, recklessly drove us into a hazard zone, and nearly sent us off a cliff. We need a tow, and I want this man terminated immediately upon our return." I sat there, my blood running ice cold. I had spent 9 years building my reputation in this district, and this arrogant prick was going to erase it in 5 seconds to cover up his own stupidity. Vance unkeyed the mic, looked at me with a sickeningly smug grin, and said, "It's a regional director's word against a dirt kicker's. You're done, mountain boy." He thought he had me backed into a corner, but he underestimated just how well I knew this terrain and how much pride a guy like him has. I didn't yell. I didn't argue. I just looked down, acting totally defeated. "You're right, sir," I said, my voice trembling perfectly. "I messed up. I totally panicked. I let him soak up the power trip. Then I planted the seed. But sir, when the superintendent gets here with the tow truck, he's gonna see me in the driver's seat. He's gonna know I ruined this mission. If you really want to show them how command material handles a crisis, you should be behind the wheel when they pull up. Show them you took control of the situation." Vance's eyes lit up. The thought of looking like the heroic regional director who wrangled a rogue truck was too good for him to pass up. "Good thinking," he grunted. "Get out and spot me." I carefully opened my door and squeezed out against the rock wall. Vance shimmied over into the driver's seat, grabbing the steering wheel with hands that had clearly never seen a day of hard labor. I walked to the front of the truck, right by the cliff edge, and listened. Down the mountain I could hear the roar of a heavy diesel engine. The rescue truck, carrying the superintendent, was coming around the final bend. The timing had to be perfect. As the heavy rescue rig pulled into view, I locked eyes with Vance through the windshield. I threw my arms up and yelled, "Okay, sir, hit the gas, hard in reverse, show him how it's done." Vance, wanting to look like an absolute alpha male in front of the arriving superintendent, slammed his foot down on the accelerator, but without weight in the back, the tires didn't grip. They just violently dug into the loose dirt, kicking up a massive cloud of mud and dust, sinking the rear axle deep into the mountain and causing the truck to slide another terrifying inch toward the cliff. The rescue crew slammed on their brakes. The fire superintendent jumped out and ran over just as Vance realized what he had done. Vance was frozen behind the wheel, pale as a ghost, covered in a fine layer of dust, with the truck completely bottomed out and teetering. He looked like an absolute fool. The superintendent looked at the truck, looked at Vance clutching the steering wheel in a total panic, and then looked at me standing safely on the road. "What the hell is going on here?" the super barked. I just shrugged, putting on my best innocent face. "I don't know, boss. The director here insisted he take the wheel. Said he wanted to show me how they drive back at the regional office." Vance tried to stutter out a defense, tried to say it was my fault, but the visual evidence was undeniable. He was the one behind the wheel, aggressively destroying a Forest Service vehicle on the edge of a cliff. The superintendent just shook his head in absolute disgust and ordered Vance out of the truck. We ended up having to winch the truck out, and a helicopter had to deliver the lunches to the crews, completely humiliating Vance in the process. When we got back to camp, I told the super the whole truth. He laughed, told me I should have trusted my instincts, but completely cleared my name. As for Vance, his little stunt got reported all the way up the chain. The desk jockey had his field privileges permanently revoked. He spent the rest of his career rotting in a cubicle, never allowed near a wildfire again. And me? I kept my job and gained a legendary reputation for letting an arrogant boss dig his own grave.